There's this moment that happens a lot in business where you look at something you created, a post, a pitch, a product, a price tag, and you have to ask yourself, did I make this because I believed in it? Or did I make this because I was scared not to? Those are two very different places to build from, and today we're going to name them, look at them, and figure out which one you're actually operating from right now. Welcome to Mocktails with Marina. I'm your host, Marina, and we're going to dive right in. But first, if you are new here, this is the show where we talk about business without the grind, worship, identity without the masks, and life design that doesn't require you to sacrifice the things that actually matter. I'm a sober entrepreneur, a mama to a very new baby, and I run a virtual business with my husband that we built for flexibility first. Our heart and soul is in the non-alc and kava industries, but we are here to help anyone who resonates. Today's episode is one that I am very excited to talk about because it started out as a framework and then it became a philosophy. So bear with me. This one is going to go a little deep. Okay, so here's the premises. There are two types of business owners. And I want to be so clear, like this is not about success level or revenue. It's not about how put together your Instagram looks or whether you've hit 6 figures or 20. This is about the state you're operating from. Type 1 operates from love and type 2 operates from fear. And most of us at some point or another, sometimes in the same week, have been both. Fear-based operation isn't a character flaw or a weakness, but it is a very rational human response to uncertainty. When your income is on the line, when your identity is wrapped up in your work, when you've sacrificed stability to build something, the fear makes sense. But the thing about fear being your default operating system is that it produces outputs that look like a business, but feels very hollow. It produces content that performs, but doesn't connect. It produces offers designed to capture rather than to serve. It produces a version of you that's always reacting to trends, to competitors, to silence in your DMs, instead of creating. Love as a state is very different. And I don't mean love in a soft, everything is roses kind of way. I mean love as an orientation. Love as the reason you made the thing. Love as the force that keeps you building even when nobody's watching. Let me walk you through what that actually looks like. Now, I'm going to describe some scenarios, and I want you to notice if any of them feel familiar. Let's start with the pricing panic. Type 2 prices based on what they think someone will say yes to, not what they actually believe their work is worth. They drop their rates before the client even asks. They offer a discount in the same breath as the pitch, almost like a preemptive apology without charging at all. They don't hold the line on rates because deep down, there's this fear that if they charge more, no one will buy, and that will mean something about their value as a person. This could also be the same for overpricing as well, but we won't dive too deeply into that because usually that's not people's issue, at least the people that we work with. Now, another scenario is the content spiral. Type 2 wakes up, checks their metrics, and lets the numbers tell them how they're doing as a business and a human being. A post underperforms and suddenly they're questioning their niche, their voice, and their entire strategy. They chase whatever format is doing well right now, even if it doesn't fit them. They create content to prove they exist, not to say something. Another scenario is the competitor obsession. Type 2 spends hours studying what other people in their space are doing. Not for inspiration, but for threat assessment. They track who's growing, who just launched something similar, who seems to be winning, and they make decisions based on what others are doing rather than what they believe in. They're always looking sideways, never just running their own race. Another scenario, the yes spiral. Type 2 takes clients they already know aren't a fit because they're scared of an empty pipeline. They over-deliver to people who undervalue them because they needed the approval. They say yes to opportunities that aren't aligned because what if this is the one and I pass on it? They build a business full of obligations that feel like obligations. The next scenario is the launch frenzy. Type 2 constantly launches, not because they have something new to say, but because going quiet feels dangerous. They confuse motion with momentum. Every launch is tinged with this low-grade desperation that the audience can feel even when they can't name it. There's a kind of reaching in the copy that puts people off, even if the offer is good. One more scenario for now. Type 2 in the validation loop. Type 2 needs external confirmation to believe that they're on the right track. They post and then immediately check. They share a win and then need people to respond to it for it to feel real. Their confidence is borrowed. It lives outside of them, in comments and DMs and conversion rates. I want to say it again, I'm not saying that any of these people are bad at business. Some of them are making very good money, but they are exhausted because fear is an incredibly expensive fuel source. It works, but it does cost everything. Okay, now I'm going to show you the flip side, and we're going to go through similar scenarios, but from the type 1 operating from love perspective. So, first scenario, pricing from belief. Type 1 sets their prices by starting with this question. What do I need to charge to fully show up for this person? Not what will they pay. They know their number, they say it clearly, and they hold it. Not out of arrogance, but out of respect. Respect for their work, for their client's intelligence, and for the relationship they want to build. When they raise their rates, they do it from a place of expansion, not desperation. The next scenario is content from conviction. Type 1 creates something when they have something to say. They might post less, they might have a slower growth trajectory, but when they do show up, there's a signal to it, a reason that it exists. Their content isn't performing for an algorithm, but it's talking to a real person. And people feel that. You feel that right now. When someone is making something for you versus making something to get something from you, you can always tell. The next scenario is the competitor curiosity. Type 1 looks at others in the space with genuine interest, not threat mapping. They can celebrate someone else's launch without making it mean something about their own. They draw from what they see, they ignore what doesn't fit, and they go back to doing their own thing. Their lane feels wide because they're not constantly checking if someone's gaining on them. The next scenario, the client discernment. Type 1 turns down work that isn't right, not because they're precious, but because they know a misaligned client creates twice the work and half the results. They'd rather have a short pipeline and full integrity than a full pipeline and resentment. They have standards not because they're arrogant, but because they've learned what it costs to compromise them. The next scenario, the slow, intentional launch. Type 1 launches when they're ready to stand behind something fully. Their copy doesn't reach, it extends. It's an invitation, it's not a grab, and that difference is very palpable. Buyers who come from an invitation feel different than buyers who come from urgency. They're more committed, better clients, and much more likely to get results. And the final scenario is the self-sourced confidence. Type 1 doesn't need the metric to validate the decision. They know what they built and why. A quiet week doesn't send them into a spiral. A slow launch doesn't make them question their existence. They have an internal reference point for their own worth that isn't up for daily renegotiation. And none of this is naive, by the way. Type 1 still watches numbers. They still care about revenue. They still have hard days and doubts. But their baseline state, the place they return to, is love, belief, commitment to the thing they actually want to build. So in my world, specifically in the non-alcoholic industry, the sober curious space, the community of people who've chosen presence over numbing, we have a word for this type 1 operator, and we call them a Bula Boss. Bula is a Fijian word. It's a greeting, but it also means so much more than hello. It means life, vitality, health, wishing someone all of that when you see them. So when you say Bula to someone in Fiji, you're not just acknowledging them, but you are celebrating the very fact that they exist. Our son's nickname is Bula Baby, and that tells you everything you need to know about how seriously I take this word. A Bula Boss is someone who brings that energy to their business. They're not just alive, but they are living. They lead with vitality, not anxiety. They create from a place of meaning. They build things that reflect who they actually are, not who they think they need to be or to perform in order to succeed. And in the sober and non-alcoholic space specifically, this matters so much because so many of us came here after years of operating from fear, numbing the fear, powering through with substances that made the discomfort bearable. And then one day we stopped and we had to learn, really learn what it felt like to be in our bodies, in our businesses, in our lives without the armor. A Bula Boss is someone who did that work. We chose to feel it all. Who decided that presence, even uncomfortable presence, was a better foundation than performance. That's the type of business owner I'm trying to be every day. That's the type of business owner I want to help you become. So the question I know you're asking is, okay, how? How do you actually make this shift? How do you move from operating from fear to operating from love when the fear is legitimate, when the stakes are real, and when rent is due and the sales are not there yet? I'm going to be honest with you, you don't just flip a switch. This isn't a decision you make once and then you're done. It is a practice. It is daily, sometimes hourly, and you return to the question, where am I building from right now? But here are some things that actually help. Notice the texture of what you're making. When you're creating something, a post, an offer, an email, whatever it is, pay attention to how it feels to make it. Does it feel expansive or contracting? Are you creating from overflow or from scarcity? Fear has a texture. It's tight. It rushes. It second guesses. Love is slower, more patient, more spacious. You can tell the difference if you slow down enough to feel it. Next, trace the decision back to its source. Before you make a business move, ask, why am I doing this? And be honest. Because I think it'll help people is love. Because I'm scared if I don't, I'll fall behind is fear. Both might lead to the same action, but one of them will sustain you and the other is going to hollow you out. Next, rebuild your relationship with metrics. Data is not a verdict. Your numbers are information, not an identity. A post that didn't perform is not evidence that you don't belong. A launch that didn't hit isn't proof that your offer is bad. Type 1 operators use data as a tool, not a judge. So practice this. Look at your numbers, ask what they're telling you, make a note, and close the tab. Don't let them set your emotional temperature for the day. Next, clean up your pricing and commitments. If you have clients you took and decided to onboard or decided to serve out of fear that you now resent, figure out how to close that cleanly. If you have prices you set from desperation, raise them, not because you suddenly have more value, but because you're choosing to lead with what you actually believe. This is uncomfortable. Do it anyway. Lastly, create something you'd make even if nobody saw it. Once a week, once a month, make something just because you believe in it. Write the post that's too real. Record the episodes that's a little scary. Build the offer you've been putting off because you weren't sure if it would sell. Do it from love, and then let it go into the world without attachment to the response. This practice is a lot like lifting weights. The more you do it, the stronger the love-based muscle gets. If you've been listening to this episode and thinking, I want to build like that, I want you to know that's not an accident. That pull you're feeling toward a different way of doing business is a love-based thinking method already showing up for you. The Bula Boss path is something I'm building out into a more formal space. Right now, the place to start that is at www.marinamars.com/BulaBoss. Bula, by the way, is spelled B-U-L-A. That's where you can learn more about what it means to operate from this framework, this philosophy, and this version of yourself. And if you're in the podcasting world specifically, if you're building a show that you want to mean something, and also you want to make money without living on sales calls, Profitable Podcasting Without Sales Calls is still open. That program is built entirely from this philosophy. It's how I built this. You can find the link in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here, for listening, for building something that matters even when it's hard. You are a Bula Boss, or at the very least, you're becoming one. Either way, I'm glad you're here. And until next week, I am so excited for you to go build with love. And as always, if you need anything, just let me know.